Welcome to Break the Loop, the place where shadows transform into personal power. Here we break the loop, shift timelines, and step into the highest version of ourselves. And today, we are entering one of the most important chapters of your transformation journey, emotional awareness. If identity shift changes your trajectory, emotional awareness is what stabilizes it. This episode is where psychology, the nervous system, and quantum alignment meet. Because your emotions aren't random, they are signals. And if you learn how to read those signals, you gain the ability to know exactly when you're slipping into the lower timeline, when your shadow is activating, and when your higher identity is calling you forward. Emotional awareness is not about controlling your emotions or suppressing them. It's about learning the language of your inner world, a language that your body speaks clearly, but most people never listen to. By the end of this episode, you will understand how your emotions guide your timeline, how they reveal your loops in real time, how they point directly to your shadow, and how they unlock your highest identity. Let's begin with the truth that most people never learn. Your emotions are not problems to fix. They are messages to decode. Your emotional responses are not mistakes. They are signals from your nervous system, shaped by past experiences, survival strategies, identity imprints, and unprocessed shadow material. Emotions don't come out of nowhere. They rise for a reason, and the moment you treat your emotions as intelligence, instead of inconvenience, your entire reality begins to shift. You stop fighting yourself. You start listening to yourself. You stop judging what you feel. You start understanding what you feel. Most people loop because they don't understand what their emotions are trying to tell them. They feel a spike, but they misinterpret it. They feel shut down, but they think they're overreacting. They feel anger, but they label it as bad. They feel fear, but they think they're weak. They feel anxiety, but they think it means something is wrong with them. No, the emotion is not the issue, the misunderstanding is. Your emotions are the fastest way to detect which timeline you're on. When you're aligned with your higher identity, your emotional world feels grounded, open, spacious, clear. Not perfect, but regulated. You feel a sense of truth in your body. You feel connected to your breath. You feel more neutral than reactive. But when you're in the lower timeline, your emotional body reacts automatically. You get pulled into emotional spikes. You feel survival patterns take over. You feel the shadow identity trying to regain control. You feel heavy, tight, contracted, or overwhelmed. Emotional constriction is one of the clearest signs you're in the lower timeline. Emotional openness is one of the clearest signs you're in the higher timeline. Emotion is the tuning fork. Emotion is the frequency. Emotion is the signal. Emotion tells you where you are before your mind even realizes it. So what exactly is emotional awareness? It is the skill of recognizing your emotional state without being consumed by it. It is the ability to witness the emotion instead of becoming the emotion. It is the practice of naming what you feel without collapsing into it. Emotional awareness is not thinking about your feelings. It is feeling your feelings with consciousness. When you say, "I'm feeling fear," without judging it or resisting it, you activate awareness. When you say, "I'm feeling anger," without blaming anyone or suppressing it, you activate awareness. When you say, "I'm feeling shame," without spiraling into self-attack, you activate awareness. This skill is transformative because the moment you name an emotion consciously, the emotional loop loses power. You break the neurological pattern by stepping out of autopilot and into presence. Let's bring in the nervous system. Your emotional reactions are not random. They are your nervous system's attempt to keep you safe based on past experiences. When your nervous system senses threat, even emotional or symbolic threat, it activates old emotional loops. This is why certain situations trigger you instantly. A tone of voice, a facial expression, a small disappointment, a boundary, a moment of silence, a text message. These aren't overreactions. They are echoes of emotional memory, signals that your body learned long ago. Your emotions are not happening to annoy you, they're trying to protect you. But the problem is that your nervous system is protecting you from the past, not the present. When you understand this, your entire relationship with emotion changes. You stop criticizing yourself for feeling deeply. You stop apologizing for having a sensitive nervous system. You stop trying to suppress your emotional truth. You begin to see emotions as guides rather than enemies. Now let's bring in quantum theory and identity. Your emotional state is the frequency of the identity you are inhabiting. When you feel stuck, small, scared, or tense, you are emotionally aligned with the lower timeline identity, the past self, the shadow self, the version of you shaped by old loops. When you feel grounded, clear, intentional, or expanded, you align with the identity of your higher timeline. Emotion is the bridge between identity and reality. Emotion is what collapses one probability and activates another. When your emotional state changes, your reality changes, not because of metaphysical magic, but because your behavior, your choices, your perception, your boundaries, your energy, and your identity shift. Emotions are the energetic expression of the identity you're embodying in the moment. So how do you use emotional awareness to break the loop in real time? You begin by noticing the signal: emotional spikes, emotional shutdown, tightness in the chest, tension in the stomach, pressure in the throat, heaviness in the body. These are not random sensations. They are loop signals. They tell you your shadow is trying to take the wheel. Your old identity is activating. You are about to repeat the pattern. Emotional awareness allows you to interrupt the loop before it becomes behavior. When you feel the emotional signal, you pause. You breathe. You name the emotion. I feel fear. I feel shame. I feel anger. I feel disappointment. Naming the emotion pulls you out of the loop and into awareness. Awareness breaks the loop. Then once you've named it, you ask, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Emotions are messengers. Fear often says, I don't feel safe. Anger often says, a boundary was crossed. Sadness says, something meaningful matters to me. Shame says, I'm afraid of rejection. Understanding the signal gives you choice. This leads us to the emotional awareness method, a simple practice that allows you to stabilize your higher identity. Step 1, feel. Step 2, name. Step 3, decode. Step 4, choose. You feel the emotion in your body. You name it without judgment. You decode the message behind it. You choose a response that aligns with your higher identity instead of your shadow identity. For example, you feel anger. Instead of snapping, you breathe and say, this anger is telling me something matters to me. My old identity wants to attack or shut down. My higher identity wants clarity. You choose clarity. In that moment, you shift timelines, or you feel shame. Instead of collapsing, you say, this shame is telling me I care about being accepted. My old identity wants to hide. My higher identity wants honesty. You choose honesty, timeline shift, or you feel fear. Instead of avoiding, you say, this fear is telling me I'm stepping outside my comfort zone. My old identity wants safety. My higher identity wants growth. You choose growth, timeline shift. When you practice emotional awareness consistently, you will notice something subtle but profound. Your emotional reactions change, not because you suppress them, but because your identity shifts. You feel less threatened by discomfort. You recover faster from emotional spikes. You feel more grounded during conflict. You feel more clarity during uncertainty. You feel more self-leadership during stress. Your nervous system adapts. Your identity stabilizes. Your emotional world becomes a compass rather than chaos. This is one of the strongest markers that you are living in the higher timeline. But emotional awareness also reveals your shadow. Every shadow pattern has an emotional signature. If you know the emotion, you can identify the shadow immediately. Shame reveals the shadow of, I'm not enough. Anger reveals the shadow of, my needs don't matter. Fear reveals the shadow of, I'm not safe. Jealousy reveals the shadow of, I'm afraid to lose love. Resentment reveals the shadow of, I abandon myself. Emotional awareness becomes a map that shows you exactly where the shadow is hiding and how the loop is created. Once you can name the shadow, you can break the loop. Once you understand the emotional root, you can choose the new identity. So how do you know when you're aligned with your higher timeline emotionally? You begin to feel more neutrality. You feel more clarity. You feel more patience. You feel more groundedness. You feel less urgency, less panic, less reactivity. Your emotional world becomes spacious, not cramped. When something happens, you don't spiral into self-attack or blame. You pause. You observe. You decide. This is emotional mastery, not perfection, but leadership. You begin to trust yourself with your own emotions, and when you can hold your emotional experience with compassion and awareness, the shadow loses power. The loop loses power. The old identity begins to fade. Emotional awareness is also the key to regulating the nervous system, which stabilizes the new identity. A dysregulated nervous system pulls you into the lower timeline. A regulated nervous system lifts you into the higher one. Awareness is the first step toward regulation, because you cannot regulate what you refuse to feel. When you say, "I feel sad," and breathe into it, you regulate. When you say, "I feel overwhelmed," and pause, you regulate. When you say, "I feel scared," and soften your body, you regulate. Regulation is the gateway to identity stabilization. Let's bring in a real-life example. Imagine someone whose instinct during conflict is to shut down and disappear emotionally. Their emotional signal is tightness in the chest and withdrawal in the body, a classic shadow pattern. In the past, they would collapse into silence and replay the old timeline of disconnection and self-protection. But now, with emotional awareness, they feel the tightness, name the emotion, decode the signal, and choose differently. They say, "I feel scared, I want to shut down, but I choose to stay open." That microshift changes the entire experience. The timeline shifts. The old identity loosens. The shadow dissolves. Another example, someone who always reacts with impulsive anger when they feel misunderstood. Their emotional signal is heat in the chest, tension in the jaw. Their shadow identity is about to take over. In the past, this would lead to arguments, guilt, shame, and repetition of the loop. But now they pause, breathe, recognize the emotional spike, and choose the higher identity. They say, "This anger is telling me something matters to me. I choose clarity instead of attack." The pattern breaks. The timeline lifts. Emotional awareness is not a technique. It is a way of being. It is the ability to walk through your inner world with consciousness instead of fear. It is the foundation of all shadow work, identity shift, and timeline stabilization. And now we close this chapter and prepare for episode 11, where we will break down step by step the full process of how to break the loop in real time, using everything you've learned so far. Episode 11 is practical, grounded, and immediately usable. It's where the whole system comes together. Until then, break the loop, shift the timeline, and become your higher self.